You can even take a Raspberry Pi, which is like 30 pounds, with a simple camera, put some miniature road, simulate with like
a toy car.
Yeah,
like a
toy
remote
car,
control car.
stick it on the toy car. I got rejected after interview. I got the Android application. I decompiled and found like different vector attacks. It is already destroying the entry-level programming positions. That's a huge disruption to the entire industry.
Today's guest has spent over 2 decades in the industry and is here to shatter some of your assumptions. Dmitry's been in the trenches and has both been an engineer for a long time and an engineering manager and leader for a long time, hiring people into teams and looking through screening many different CVs and applications. And he knows exactly what gets people hired and what doesn't. All right, let's get into it. So I'm here with Dmitry. So Dmitry is a highly successful software engineering contractor who has previously led software teams and had various entrepreneurial pursuits over his career. Today, we're going to imagine that he has to start over from scratch. And with all the knowledge and information that he already has, he will essentially help us to identify a phased plan of how he could get into his field again. But before we get into that, first of all, let's understand a little bit about Dmitry. Dmitry, could you help us understand the career that you've built so far, and what your current role is, or what you're doing in life at the moment, and really understand what got you to where you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I've been programming pretty much since I was a kid, and commercially, I've been programming for about 24 years. So it has been a long career, and most of the technologies that I was using at the beginning don't even exist now. But currently, I'm focusing mostly on building backend with a language called Go, and also one of my strongest skills is mobile development. Part of my career that I think we'll discuss, I've been in position of head of engineering in a team of 20 engineers. I'm very passionate software engineer. It's pretty much my life. And even in my free time, I always build some side projects that I'm trying to monetize, commercialize.
Amazing. Cool. So we're going to take Dmitry through this 90-day plan framework and in essence try and break down how he would enter the workforce again from scratch. Dmitry, are you ready to crack on?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the way that I structure this is I structure this in 3 different phases. So the first phase of getting into any role, in my opinion, is building a strategic foundation. What I mean by that is having a strong amount of intelligence into what it is that you're doing, how you get into the field, and what are the important things that you need to learn in order to get a job in a particular area. On day 1 of your restart into this field, what is the very first action you take if you're getting into this field for the first time?
I will probably start with a disclaimer. Don't get into this field if you're not interested or passionate. I think, like with most of the jobs, you need to make sure that you love what you're doing, but it becomes even more important for software engineering and technology in general. The main reason is that because technology is changing so quickly, and even now pace accelerates even further to incredible level that pretty much every week we get something new, and AI helps to develop new software. So you will have to learn new stuff over and over. It's not like being in some traditional fields like being plumber or electrician where you learn the skills and you can do it for the rest of your life. So here you'll have to put more effort every single month, year to stay on top and to not stay outdated in your career. And to achieve that, you either need an incredible discipline or be very passionate. So if you're going into this field just because you heard someone is making good money, I think it's not a very good idea, or it's not enough of motivation to pursue this career. So that is my number 1 advice to how to stay in the field, because you will burn out after that if you don't have enough passion or become very outdated. Then in terms of engineering, I think what is not obvious and what people are focusing incorrectly is that people start focusing on the actual tools. In engineering, Every programming language, framework, any technology is just a tool to do its job. And again, if we draw parallels with conventional, for example, construction, you wouldn't recommend someone to learn how to use screwdriver or hammer. That's just one of the tools. You don't become a master of screwdriver. And if you're doing, for example, a job as an electrician, you might need just use a screwdriver to fix a socket or a switch, right? It's not that screwdriver is important in this job, right? So it's knowing how it works, knowing what to do with this screwdriver. It's exactly the same with technology. So don't get focused on specific language, specific database, or specific technology. Those are the easiest parts. And if you're not able to learn language on your own, that is also probably an indication that it might not be for you. So there is a lot of information on YouTube tutorials, so you can pick up any language pretty much within a week or two, and you should be able to do it on your own. You don't need any courses, teachers, mentors. And again, coming back to my previous point, you will need to be able to learn new stuff and discover new technologies because they appear very, very often and will be appearing very often. So you should be able to know how to learn yourself.
Okay, so in terms of this day one of your restart, could you walk me through, you've just restarted your career in this field. Let's deal with the first 24 hours in detail. So which websites do you sign up for? What do you sign up for? What kind of courses do you sign up for, if anything, for the first 24 hours restarting the career?
Also, I want to give a bit of kind of background what software engineering is. It's a very, very kind of wide range of disciplines, and it's the same as telling someone that you, I don't know, like, and just an engineer, not a software engineer. It can be plumber, electrician, you can build rockets, or you can be a handyman. That all falls within engineering scope. So it is exactly the same with software engineering. You can be building some websites, landing pages, or you can be building Google, a system that is used by billions of people and deployed on thousands of servers. Those are completely different disciplines and have very different requirements. So in the very first day, when you want to understand where you want to go, is you need to do a bit of research, like what kind of engineering you would enjoy. That also falls into kind of what you can understand, what is closer to your nature. Just to give an example, you may be passionate about video games, right? And without knowing any programming, if you're passionate about that, you might get closer to something more visual, maybe even being a developer in a video game studio or building apps, something that is client facing with interfaces, with animations or gamification. If you are more interested about how things work, so if you're interested, so not very visual person, you might choose either something closer to backend engineering. That's a software that runs on servers. Usually it's not client facing. It doesn't have another interface, another software attaches that. But most of the logic, business logic, happens on the back end. Or if you're very good with mathematics, algorithms, you might choose something closer to AI, data analytics, data engineering. So there are a lot of different disciplines. And as a very first step, you need to understand what you would like and where you would find your passion.
I have a quick question. If you have multiple different areas that you would be interested in, is it ever a good idea, for example, to aim your interests or aim your work or your study, if you want to call it that, towards the more financially beneficial career path? So, for example, if you were you had an interest in back-end engineering and you had an interest in AI, because of course it's massive. If those two options were presented to you, is it acceptable to say, I'm going to make more money long term doing the AI stuff and I would like to do that instead? Or do you think that people should be really, really passionate about one thing and money can fall to the wayside?
There is definitely ceiling in salary for different technologies that you will learn. There are multiple kind of factors that influence that ceiling. One could be the competition. So if you
Mm.
choose a very common technology like JavaScript, where most of the developers are going into, you will face a huge competition of software developers with supply and demand kind of mechanism in on the market. Obviously, you will not be able to demand higher salary than most of your competition can offer. Another could be niche technologies. It could be some dying out languages like Perl or like C++. They are
Mm.
widely used and also in different sectors in game development, in lower level system programming, but they're niche. So the demand is not high, but also you may get more developers from like older generations. So you need to research the fields, but also you need to understand that there would be different requirements from the job. So if you're going into financial market industry, especially with crypto, there will be much more stress. You will be working longer hours. You will be dealing with money, and the cost of your mistake would be
Mm.
much higher, and therefore the level of responsibility would be much higher. So you need to account for the way how you take stress,
Mm.
level of responsibility, accountability.
Mm.
That's also something that can burn you out, and at that point money might not be as important as you
Mm.
think at the beginning.
So in that 24 hours where you're doing that research, what are the websites that you would recommend the most, or what are the places that you would recommend the most to find this information out? And like, how would you use those websites to find that information?
Probably I would start with looking at the existing positions, job market, just search for careers, engineering careers.
This
There
is
are
on Google.
on Google, yeah,
Yeah.
anywhere. Some people have created a lot of maps of career, for example, for web developer, etc.,
Mm.
or just in general software engineering. What you want to read is the expectations from those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
You will get some idea in terms of non-technical aspect of the job, the requirements in terms of technical list, so your entry level, how high that should be. So you can then assess where you stand right now and how much you
Mm.
need to learn to get into that position. But also,
Mm.
you will get some sense of salary range. One of great resources is also Stack Overflow survey. Every year they survey
Mm.
all the developers. And for those who don't know, Stack Overflow at least used to be the main resources for software developers, as the main place to go to find answers to your questions and also ask questions if you don't know anything. And before AI, that was like the number one resource for people. Now AI already know all those answers, so people don't go
Mm.
as much to those websites. But because the main target audience of that website is software developers, engineers, they survey them and they have very detailed page where you can see the salary range, the demand. For example, they also distinguish between which technology is mostly used and which technology people would want to use. So you can get some sense of kind of what is in demand
Mm-hmm.
and where the market is going. So you want to make it a bit future proof
Mm.
for yourself, but again, be prepared that it changes quite rapidly.
Does it cost anything to go on these websites and find this information out?
No, it's public, it's free.
Yeah. So you wouldn't advise like finding anything that would be paid. You wouldn't advise like paying for something that would give you this information, because from your perspective, you can probably just find everything you need for that career for free.
At the very beginning, everything is free and available, but the most important step is for you to understand what you would like and what you would enjoy. And no one knows better than yourself. So, yeah, I would start by doing your own research. Of course, there is a lot of information, and but yeah, again, if you are not able to even do that research, that might be a signal that software engineering might not be for you, because you will have to do a lot of reading, research, and finding new information yourself in the future.
Okay. So it takes like an element of like curiosity and desire to learn things. And if you don't have that, then in a way you're kind of you're slowed down significantly by how fast you can solve problems and do things.
Also, another good research resource right now might be ChatGPT. Just
Yeah.
tell what you like doing, what you have been doing, what skills you already have, maybe any previous jobs you have had, and explain that you want to pursue a career in IT, in software engineering, and just ask what would be the easiest entry point and what kind of job titles you would research. I think ChatGPT could replace someone who could guide you in those fields. And you can also ask ChatGPT for any websites to find jobs or salary ranges, etc.
Perfect. Okay, so what skills do people typically think they need when starting a career in this field versus what is the skill that actually gets you hired in this field to get your first job?
Most of the people think or advise of learning specific languages and focus on technologies. So you may get advice of learning most popular languages like Python or JavaScript because they are in demand and a lot of stuff is built with those things. But you need to understand they are just tools. So you need to know your tool. If that tool is used for the area discipline that you have picked. I think JavaScript is used for most of the disciplines, apart from maybe building some very low level like operating systems, embedded software where you program small microcontrollers. But even there are some tools like boards that can even run JavaScript. But still, like JavaScript and Python is probably those languages that are very generic and can be applied for most of the disciplines. So it is a safe bet, safe advice, because you will probably cover a lot. Now it is like the chance that you will get hired because you know the tool is getting very, very slim. And as I said before, like if you're trying to become an electrician and you learn how to use a screwdriver, that's not enough. One of the resources I would recommend is if you're in the UK, you know company Monzo. If you're not in the UK, Monzo is one of the bank challengers. So they operate and they started as a startup. They're quite transparent and they have it's called Engineering Progression Framework. It's open source. You can find a PDF of it, but they explain how they defined levels of engineers so they have 9 levels from it's 10 to 90. And for every level, they have description of the criteria of their expectations. But one key thing is that you will see they have 2 columns for every level. One is technical skills and another is behavior skills. So most of the people start focusing on technical skills, on the languages, frameworks, and libraries. What I would suggest is to read and understand the requirements for the behavior skills. And just to give an example is for level 1 engineer, it would be like you are given very specific task and you would be able to implement it. A small task within one little like area of the project, well documented, well spec'd out, and you just implement. And like a much higher level of engineer should be able to understand many different parts of the systems, need to talk to other teams, other engineers to find solution to engineer. So they wouldn't get very detailed, spec'd out technical tasks, but they would give they would get business requirements, or they would need to understand what would give value to the business, and they would need to talk to other people and find solution, and then write those specs that will be implemented by other engineers. But it also level of responsibility and accountability that is expected. So go to that page and read, and you will get more understanding of what is required, what will get you hired for different levels.
Would you say that that's the same for most companies or just Monzo?
I think they documented it well. I've seen other companies who are good with systemizing their hiring process, they are quite close to that mentality. But Monzo's engineering framework is open source, so not all the companies share or able to systemize. So if it's a smaller company where they don't systemize and codify their processes, it might be just in the heads and various of hiring managers or head of engineering who interview developers. So they might not be even able to systemize it. So it's all very subjective.
So, if one were to look through these behaviors or these technical skills, what would be the best way of demonstrating these to someone without being in an interview? Because a lot of the time, to be considered for an interview, you would need to show those types of kind of qualities that people might want to be able to actually invite you to the interview. So, what's the best way of demonstrating some of these skills and some of these behaviors?
Sure. I want to make another disclaimer here is that every interview, as I said, especially for smaller companies, are very subjective. So people have different understanding of assessing software developers, and it's very difficult to do it like within 1 hour of interview. So you need people, hiring managers, they apply a lot of kind of very subjective heuristics to assess whether you're a good engineer or not a good engineer. And you may find a lot of people who are testing their own skills. If you get asked some questions that are not relevant to your position, or you don't get hired for one specific company or position just because of subjective view of that person, don't get discouraged. Interview process is also a two-way match system. So if they couldn't value what you have, maybe it's not, they will not value you even if they hire you. So keep on going to other interviews. Even with my career of 24 years going through different disciplines and technologies, so I don't have 100% success rate if I go through interviews. So sometimes companies don't value initiatives. When you're in a very structured, big organization, bureaucratic organization, you just need to follow processes and you need to be that one gear in the system. Sometimes if it's smaller company, they're actually looking for some skills of problem solving. So they might expect you to get vague problem and find solution. So don't assume that all interviews are the same and there is specific framework of doing interviews. Every company, every person is doing it differently.
And is that the same for being invited for interviews? Meaning, like, there's different things that people as employers will value to justify whether they invite you to even have an interview in the first place.
Yeah, as I said, like there are a lot of nuances and behavioral traits of a person that is very difficult to write, express in your CV and even on your screening calls. In my experience, I have interviewed hundreds of candidates. And in my experience, I've seen some of the best candidates with the worst CVs. They don't know how to present themselves, but they're very good at engineering and solving their skills. And when you go through the process, your CV is viewed by a number of people, and also including automated systems, now by AI as well, and also by non-technical people like recruitment agents that might not read between lines and understand value of even problems that you describe, or you might not have a good skill of selling yourself or describing. You may undervalue yourself. Yeah, it's in the best case scenario, you need to balance those things. So have a very presentable CV and also know how to present yourself in an interview.
Okay, so you don't think that there's any kind of like side project, any approach that one might take when approaching potential interviewers or potential employers? There's no specific thing that could be a project to like demonstrate some type of behavioral traits or some type of skill traits prior to just sending in a CV and hoping for the best.
I think for most of the positions, you can, it's not faking the experience, but you can get an actual experience with a side project in kind of simulation environment. And I was thinking that even for some positions that seem to be quite big, so let's say you want to apply for a company that is doing self-driving cars, right? How can you get an experience with that? You can, if you switch on your creative mind, I'm sure you can find some solutions. So either create a 3D simulation environment where you can just simulate cars and simulate the vision from the camera and focus on implementing the algorithm. You can even take a Raspberry Pi, which is like 30 pounds, 50 pounds with a simple camera, put some miniature road, simulate with like kids.
Like a toy car,
Yeah,
like a
toy
remote control
car,
car.
stick it on the toy car. You can find a way to get the feed from the camera and then implement that algorithm. It might not be perfect. It might not be on the same level as, for example, most of the self-driving cars are doing now. But if you show that it is your passion and you've gone through that level of things and you know kind of some basics of the job, of the problem, it will give you a lot of benefits. So this is probably one of more extreme scenarios, but for example, web development, app developments, that is much easier. And if you think that you don't have some unique ideas to implement, just take one of the existing apps and re-implement. Don't try to implement like to-do list, like tutorials that are useless tutorials. Most of the examples and tutorials just do the same app. If you have some of the problems that you wish were solved that would help in your life, that would be ideal. So if you can become a user of your own product, that would be the best. Maybe you can even sell and monetize, upload to Google Play Store, Apple App Store. But just take, some meditation app or financial app. Just take existing app, break it down into features, and implement maybe just one feature or the entire app. That will definitely kind of prove that you're able to deliver.
That's interesting. There's kind of two things I'm thinking about here. So on the one hand, creating this demonstration in a way, would you say that that's better than having like certifications, than having like boot camp certifications or like Code Academy certifications and stuff like that? Or is it good to have those as well? Or are they now officially kind of irrelevant these days? And what people really want is these side projects, especially for a junior. And for you who would be starting your career, is that the approach that you would take, or how would you try and play with that?
I think that for most of the software engineering, you don't need any certifications. There are still some areas where it is important to have that. Most probably, I don't know that area that much, but some network related stuff. When you work with specific hardware like Cisco, it might be a good idea to get certification. But if you are just looking for a web developer, app developer, backend developer, you can go to those courses just for yourself, but the certificate will not add as much value. The hiring process is subjective, and you may find some hiring manager who thinks that there is a lot of value in that. It's hard to tell.
So, in your opinion, what is the percentage of success in your field that comes down to who you know versus what you know? And what I mean by that is like getting jobs, for example, and keeping jobs as well.
It's a good question and hard to answer. I think those are different games, if you can call it, that you can play, or different strategies that you can follow. I think both strategies may work. If you already have credibility, then your network can definitely help you. At the very beginning, of your career, I think it still can help you because, as I said, like most of the kind of assessment happens not from your CV. And if you're going through the route without a personal connection, they will be assessing you at the beginning. Your first impression will be from your CV, which can be hit and miss. So even if it's not done by connection, if they don't know how your skills or level of your expertise through previous
Mm.
work or experience, if nobody vouches for you,
Mm.
it still can be beneficial for you to get personal connection so they can get a sense of your character, your
Mm.
passion, which might not be expressed as well through your CV.
So if you were starting your career again, that's something that you would do. You would spend time trying to build personal connections. And is that the way that you would try to kind of help people see your credibility later on down the line through personal connections? Or would you spend more time just like hammering out CVs to loads of different jobs and hoping that someone gives you an interview?
So you can still get an interview and job without knowing anyone. And most of my contracts were when I didn't know anyone in that company, and
Mm.
that was through cold approach. I was contacted by some recruitment agency, and yeah, so it's not the only strategies that you need to use, but it
Mm-hmm.
will definitely help you. It will increase your chance. So you need to do both, but also when you know more people from this field,
Mm.
maybe they can help you with an advice. Build your
Mm-hmm.
network not just to increase your chances of getting an interview, but
Mm-hmm.
just getting more into that environment of like-minded people.
Mm.
It will definitely help.
Okay. So, given that in this example you would be like starting from scratch, you wouldn't necessarily have the credibility of getting recruiters to reach out to you because they'd probably need to see your credibility first before they're willing to kind of send you a message. But it would be, you touched on something really interesting here around not just looking at the end goal as being a job, but also as an opportunity to learn more. If you were to again restart this yourself and you were at the beginning, would you be messaging people to ask them for advice? Would you be trying to reach out to like senior developers such as yourself, and trying to get them to help you learn more about how to break into the industry? Is that what you would be doing in terms of like building these connections and trying to find out more information?
If you have an opportunity to attend some of the events, London is a great place for meetups where you can go for free, listen some and watch some presentations and meet other people from big companies like Google, Amazon, and talk to them, but also meet a lot of other engineers. If you're not in one of those places with a lot of events, there should be still some events online just to get more information. Maybe
Mm.
not a lot of networking, but you can, again, as I said before, there are so many different kind of industries and areas that you may want to go into, whether it's
Mm.
cryptocurrency development or some blockchain networks or game development. There are a lot of Discord channels where there is
Mm.
community where you can talk. But also if you can send a message to someone on LinkedIn, I think most of the humans are quite social creatures, so they could help you. So maybe
Mm.
not 100% response rate, but yeah, you can definitely try connecting with someone and asking questions.
And that's something that you would do at the beginning of your career if you were doing it today, or is that not something that you would do?
I would definitely try. Yeah, the probability of one channel of getting in an interview will
Mm.
not be 100%. So you want to increase that either by adding channels or increasing chances of passing those interviews or getting an interview. More you do, either improving your skills, reaching out to people, also learning behavioral aspects of a job would be
Mm.
difficult by doing courses. So
Mm.
if you participate in either open source projects or just finding a group of like-minded people and doing a small side project,
Mm.
that will help you to get sense of the job.
That makes a lot of sense because obviously there is so many different things that you can be doing at any given time to try and get into a field, and there is a limited amount of energy that an individual might have or a limited amount of resources that a person might have. And if you're trying out different channels, then presumably you can kind of test which channels are working best and then focus on those channels. That'd probably be a good way of using that theory that you've given in practice as well and adding to that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd be interested to know, where do you go for getting real industry information? So not like public relations nonsense, not just very generic stuff, but what places do you go yourself to get really good information about the industry? And which ones would you use if you were to start your career again?
So I think at this point I have very specific areas of interest, either specific technologies, like I always follow Apple's developer conference that they do every year, and they release a ton of videos, presentations with updates on their technology, but also some generic videos like on design, accessibility, inclusivity. That is something that could be applied to not just developers for Apple devices. And I have a lot of subscriptions on YouTube just for my area of interest, either in around specific technologies or in general about some approaches. If you don't have any of them, maybe just start subscribing to whatever you find interesting on YouTube. YouTube now has a lot of people who talk about technologies and development in general. I think that is a great resource and easy to consume the knowledge. Resource that I find useful is on medium.com. Again, you can find a lot of other publications of how they structure specific authors that talk about those technologies or industries that you're interested in. If you're looking into creating your own product, like an app or website, then follow the people who have done that successfully. There are quite a lot of people who have built successful applications making good money. So you want to find someone who has done it before and just follow them and read or watch what they're saying.
How do you separate between the people who are just like random people who are saying that they've done what they've done and people who have genuinely done what they've done, so that you know for a fact that you're getting information from the best people?
It also depends on what exactly you're looking for. So if it's a general advice on how to become a software engineer, those people, for example, who got an engineering job, maybe they got lucky with one thing, or maybe their understanding of what got them hired is slightly different to what's actually was in the head of the hiring manager. It's quite difficult to separate them. Again, I think the main feedback or the main kind of guidance for you should be the feedback from your interview. When you're starting from zero, you have to trust probably your gut, your instinct. If it's just advice on how to get hired, it's a tough one, because some people would recommend learning like algorithms and data structures that I think is important at a later stage of career, and in general, like it will make you a better engineer, but it might not be something that you will be doing on a daily basis on most of the jobs. Although there are a lot of companies that will test you on algorithms, even though when you're hired and you come to that job, you will never have to implement your algorithms. I don't think there is a right answer for this. As I said, a lot of things are subjective in the hiring process. You need to find what you like and what works for you.
So if you could give me like one name or one channel or one thing that you would say, if you were starting again, you would absolutely like live by listening to this channel. And it can be even something that's quite specific to the topic that you're interested in, like one crypto software channel or one particular channel that has something that you would absolutely listen to on a regular basis.
That's a difficult question.
You might need to check your YouTube.
If you like developing apps or games for mobile devices, you definitely need to follow official channels from Apple, from Google. If it's some game engines like Unity, Unreal Engine, follow what those companies release. Or maybe if you're doing apps in general, watch videos from Google I/O conference, Apple WWDC. They have a lot of overlapping in terms of kind of thinking and what is a common knowledge when you develop an app. They have a lot of videos, and I now watch all of them. I choose by interest. So some of them could be like very detailed on networking on low level or about compilers. it might not be relevant for you, or some of them could be about VR or vision frameworks. Again, depending whether it's relevant or not relevant, but there is a lot of videos to choose from, and you can learn a lot from there. But again, only if you're into app development. There are some people, again, who are in general talking or reviewing some news that are interesting, but they might go to some parts of like advocating for their favorite text editor that, in my view, is not the main skill that will get you hired. There is a channel that I would recommend for general curiosity. Is called Computer File.
Computer File.
They have, as I understand, a lot of professors from UK universities covering some of the computer science and general topics. It could be specific algorithms. It could be, like, we know that there was a big scandal with software used in post offices that caused a lot of trouble in the UK. And they explain the nature of the problem. It could be some very niche examples or some generic. I think, as we discussed before, you need to have some curiosity about how things work. And this channel is a great one. So it will not teach you the skills like programming language, how to work with specific database, but I think it should satisfy your curiosity about how different things work. I enjoy watching them. It's a great resource.
So the question that I've got left for phase one is, assuming that you, in your career search from the beginning, have limited energy, how do you decide what to focus on first versus what can wait?
So here I think a bit of social engineering might help you. You really want to work in a specific field or in a specific company doing a specific thing, and you want to get there as efficiently as possible without spending an extra energy. So find some people who either work on the same position in that company or doing the same thing on LinkedIn or in different charts in Medium, and try to talk to them. If you could get to a decision maker who is either a hiring manager, and if you can establish good connection, good report, so they could advise you or give feedback, if it's not a one short opportunity where you go for interview and then you can go for interview every single week after you learn a bit more. So yeah, you need to find a way how to get more frequent feedback, but from people who are closer to knowing what's deciding factors for you to get hired. Again, as I said, it varies quite a lot. So, for example, we mentioned Monzo. You can find a lot of information like the engineering progression framework. That is pretty much framework that they use internally for hiring. So they are very open company, and you can get a lot of information straight away. And also they have a very active community, and I'm sure if you ask questions from someone who worked there, they should be able to guide you through that career.
Okay, so phase two is outside of the foundations of what you're building. This is when you start to position yourself in a way. And what I want to touch on is kind of like controversial or kind of like strange things could you do to position yourself in a way where people would say, okay, this person may be interesting.
Don't think there is a silver bullet for this. And the whole question is about what's something unique you could do. That really depends on the context, on the company or position. And you need to be creative with that. I think just as a common ground for like the baseline for this would be to understand the product or the problem that they're solving, that they may have internally, or what problem they're trying to solve by hiring you. So is it they have too many tasks and they just need more manpower? Do you have some specific experience that they're interested in, you can help? Yeah, so either internally within the organization, what problem they're trying to solve by hiring you, but also as a business, what value they're trying to build. You need to remember that you're dealing with businesses that most likely are trying to make profit. To make profit, they're trying to create value for their clients as a consumers or other businesses. If you can think on that level of what will give more value to the business and how it can help them to make more money, to become directly or indirectly. So indirectly, it could mean that you can make it something more efficient, saving money, or when you implement a feature, it's not about the technology that you're using, you're building, but how that technology can produce value for the business. And therefore, you need to keep that mentality during the interview, during the entire process, and maybe post-interview, try to find those opportunities where you can spot some gap that you could fill with your expertise. In my experience, I wouldn't say hack something, but was close to that. So basically I got rejected after interview. It was around the applications, building applications, and I got the Android application. I decompiled, and on Android it's easier to do. I kind of reverse engineered and wrote them analysis of how it works and found like different vector attacks explaining, look, you're doing this in this way, and it's easy to bypass, and it was financial application, by the way. And I said, okay, here you don't encrypt data. And if someone gets hold of your client's device, they could easily extract that information. Here, there is a way to bypass the login. So it was like a white hat hacking without extracting any value from it. But it proved to them that I understand what they care about, what problems they're trying to solve for their clients, like protecting the financial data. And that actually worked. I got an offer. They even said it was a special project. They gave me an offer just based on that. And
fantastic.
But I think the key here is not trying to hack something, but trying to show understanding what they care about for their clients, for their business, etc. And you can research and try to understand that before the interview, and you can express it as part of the discussion, so you don't always have to kind of reverse engineer something.
I love that. That's a really good example. What I'm getting from what you've said so far is that a really big part of being a interesting software engineer is being able to understand and interpret the requirements of a business and to try to create something or try to show value that's much more specific to a business, rather than create one thing that's just going to, in and of itself, be of interest to an organization. So I suppose this is a bit of a weird question given that context, but if there was something that someone could create to showcase their abilities that wasn't their CV, would you suggest that they do? Would you suggest that they create like a software engineering portfolio and like a GitHub with all of their personal projects on it? Or would you suggest something else, which is something that they could send or show people before they get an interview, which could help their chances of getting an interview?
Again, it really depends on the nature of the person and what they capable or what they like doing. Some people may prefer to get very specific tasks. It might be challenging technically without thinking of business value and thinking for the customer, but just pure technical tasks like optimizing some algorithm can be very challenging technically. It can take a long time and can take a lot of skill and knowledge to implement. And some people would prefer doing those kind of tasks. Some people can be more creative in terms of implementing UI. It doesn't require a lot of technical skills. Like you might not need to know algorithms, data structures to implement that, but you can feel what works for user in terms of usability, user experience, etc. Or it could be completely entrepreneurial idea, how to extract monetary value from something else. Those could be like on a very different sides of some scale where people can stand. But for every single kind of areas of this, you can find a way how to implement. So if you're interested in the first example, like just pure technical challenges, you can either implement something on your own or for this kind of jobs, technical challenges like lead code can be a good demonstration where you focus just on algorithms. They don't give you business value. They give you very specific technical task and you implement. Or you can find some open source software. There are plenty and probably plenty that you already use by yourself. Try to understand what they do and find an opportunity where you can make a difference and can make even a small impact. So if you can optimize something like memory usage or performance, that could be a good demonstration and it will be in your CV. You can talk about that and will be a great example for you to go through code review by the maintainers of those projects. It will give you very valuable experience. For those who are more kind of customer facing and more creative visual people, you can implement or just I've seen a lot of people just focusing on implementing animations and designs of applications of websites. They can take some existing application like YouTube or Spotify and try to re-implement either some screen or some specific user journey with nice animations, transitions. Again, this could be a good demonstration. I know that Telegram Messenger, they post a lot of competitions for implementing some of the features. For Android, for iOS, they can say, okay, we want to implement a new screen for making audio calls, voice calls. They give you a design and animation how it should look, and you just need to implement. And they give monetary rewards and quite large ones like 50K if you win that, and it goes into the code base eventually. So you can search for those kind of competitions. So you can find ways of doing that, and you should be able to spot those gaps and opportunities that you can implement and where you can add value in whatever field is more suitable for you. And you just need to start looking for those opportunities and start building them. And you don't need to be part of Spotify to redesign the screen. Come up with a concept, design concept, and just implement. When you do, you can either send that to them and say, look, I'm passionate about that. I like your application. Here is my view. And maybe you get hired by them just from that. But if not, you can always go to other competitors or even anyone who's doing any UI who use Spotify or any other application. So that will definitely add value to your CV, to your portfolio.
Is that something that, like, again, the version of you that's restarted your career, is that a way that you would actually try and develop credibility quickly as well? You would create versions of applications, of workflows, of customer journeys or whatever, and then take like a big company. You use the example of Spotify. You might take that and say, I want to work for a music company. I know Spotify are really big, but I also know that they may not necessarily respond to me. So perhaps what I want to do is like create those screens and then start talking to, like, you know, all the others that exist on the market, Apple Music, obviously YouTube Music, or things that are slightly more kind of left of field. Is that something that you would be thinking about as well, and an approach that you would take to try and build credibility if you didn't have it previously?
Yeah. So if you're not targeting a specific company, then you may just take a generic user journey like video player. Doesn't have to say YouTube or have YouTube logo, for example, but can demonstrate some innovative ideas that you have around video playback. If you're good at spotting some inconveniences when playing videos, and it could be a specific type of videos, either short content or long content. For example, how you search within the video, how you save positions, bookmark. Like you need to have the design thinking for that specific job. If that is your kind of advantage, you can demonstrate without being asked to solve those problems. So that would be a good demonstration that you will be good for or you would be a good fit for this job if you have that
Mm.
design thinking. But again, that is just one way of expressing or one traits that you may have.
Sure.
If you don't have that, then just find what is your advantage and find a way to express it.
If we were to use this example of starting again in software engineering for cryptocurrency, let's say, like what would you build in order to make a company that is in the crypto space look at you and say, I like this person, I'm interested in potentially hiring this person?
Crypto space is interesting and dangerous. Again, even within the crypto space, it could be a lot of different things that you could do, and a lot of companies within crypto space. I think it's a very generic term. Just to name a few, it could be algorithmic trading. It could be implementing like even games using smart contracts, or coming up with new decision engines, or even databases for storing blockchain. There are a lot of different problems that you can solve within crypto space or blockchain. You need to find what is more suitable for you. If you like taking risks or good with trading strategies, algorithms, you may go into trading and look at decentralized exchanges. The nature of blockchain is that it's all open, so you can observe all the transactions, and you can find some big companies that are trading and analyze their trades, or maybe just do some simulation of trading, arbitrage trading, or whatever it is. You can do it on either on smaller scale, or again analyze what the company that where you want to work was trying to understand what this job would look like, and do that in a smaller scale, but something that you could show to them and say, look, this is what I've built, and demonstrate the skill that you think will be advantages for them.
Interesting. Again, it's this thing that I'm getting from our conversation is really around, like, I suppose, this understanding of how your skills, capabilities, interests will align with the specific set of problems that a company is facing. I suppose one thing that would be useful to understand, given how important it is from the way that you're thinking about this, to identify a problem and to understand how you can fit within the problems that a company is facing. How do you learn about the problems that a company is facing if they're not openly talking about it?
It really depends. So, for example, if it's a game development, it's all about perception of games. So it might not be very objectively measured thing. For example, if it's fun or not fun, it could be very pixelated rectangles, but you can build a very fun gameplay, and at the same time you can implement very photorealistic picture, but it might not be very funny. It could be very boring to play. But if you're trying to demonstrate your 3D programming, even if it's boring, the performance of 3D rendering might be enough to demonstrate your skill. But if you're applying to like a game designer, then the former example of building something fun but with primitive graphics might be more interesting to demonstrate. So you need to look within the context of what you're trying to show, demonstrate, and what is really important there.
So let's say, for example, you were in that position where you were looking at a company that was a games company, and you wanted to find a problem that that games company had. What would you look for in the context of the games company to understand what kind of problem you could potentially show in like a demonstration of some kind, like build something or whatever, for that company or for that industry? Like, what is the thing? What would be the way of you finding that context?
Well, I guess it depends how you approach that. So if you're a user of their products, let's say, again, some of the big names, YouTube, Spotify, or some specific games, if you're already a user, you might know the specific problems, something that annoys you, you have better ideas. So you already have the context and you may just know. If it's a random company, so you've never done game development, but you decided that that is something you would want to do, and you don't have specific company like Nintendo that you want to work for, but for example, you want to target a range of AAA game studios, right? You may not focus on specific problem that is unique for the company, but the problem that they're trying to solve with the game. So again, if it's AAA, you may try to replicate what they're already doing. So the problem that they're already solving, just show your competency in that field, or that you're interested and capable of understanding the nature of work.
Going into phase 3, final phase, let's say that you're ready to actively pursue opportunities. You've already created these demonstrations. What is your strategy to pursue these opportunities? Like, do you have a specific strategy around how much time you should spend finding more companies of a similar type? Or do you have any strategies around how much you need to customize your approaches to different companies? I'm interested to know a little bit about this too.
That is also a very tough question because the market is changing and has changed a lot in last few years. If previously there was a big shortage of software developers, the dynamic of the market was different. So you would just post your CV on one of the job sites and you'll get called by the agents straight away. And a lot of companies were hiring junior developers even without meeting their criteria. So the companies were ready to invest into people and without getting any value from you for next 1 or 2 years, hoping that that investment will pay off just because it was impossible to get a candidate who would fit their requirements. With all the layoffs, it is much more difficult. Although there is still shortage of good specialists, but for junior developers, it's much more difficult. I think all the previous stages that we discussed become more relevant now because it's not enough just to be ready to learn and hoping that the company will invest because they don't have any other choices. You need to have some of the advantages against your competitors, other candidates that would be valued by the company. And you know that the hard skills, like knowledge of specific technology, that is definitely not the advantage that you should bet on. And with raising popularity and raising capabilities of AI, that part is getting filled much easier and is becoming less in demand. So you need to really show your ability to understand and solve problems rather than just being able to code something. You need to be aware of this shift in the dynamics of the market and also be cautious with the advice that you get from YouTube videos that were posted 5 years ago. They might not be relevant today, and maybe what I'm saying now might not be relevant in 2 years. But you need to be very, very proactive. You also need to understand that the competition is huge. I've seen on some positions that are posted on LinkedIn that was 2 or 3 years ago. So now it might be even worse. That after one day since the position was posted, there were 400 applicants on one position. And most probably, your CV will not be viewed if it's done manually or it will be screened by AI. And it becomes a game of numbers. So you need to be very proactive. You need to be ahead of your competition in a creative way. And everything that we discussed previously about having network of people, being able to progress faster without having a job by finding problems that would be more valued than the hard skill is now getting very critical. Yeah, think of some ideas that we haven't discussed. So you need to be creative, but very, very proactive.
Let's say, for example, you are invited to an interview. What is the best way to prepare for an interview, in your opinion?
Everything applies to the interview stage as well. So being creative and understanding that technical hard skill might not be the only thing that is that can get you hired. So they still may ask technical questions, but if you can show something creative or better understanding of the problem, or even if you ask the right questions, or even repeat your understanding of why you might be helpful to the company, to the team,
Mm-hmm.
that can be a signal for them that it's not just a job that you don't care about. People value when you have can show passion and do the work, not just because you need money, not 9 to 5, but you can be different and can add some value. And from a lot of businesses, that involves some level of creativity and thinking outside of the box. So first advice: research the company, try to find the structure of their team. So you probably will know the name of the person who is interviewing. You check their LinkedIn profile, see who else is working within that department. You can get some picture of the structure of the company, like if they have QA testers, if they have designers, product managers, who is the motivation, who is the top management, what their background is, etc. See what they have gone through. If it's a startup, they may have done a few pivots, changed their strategy a bit. So try to understand why they have done that, worked, what didn't work. Again, you may find some creative ideas there. Those things that can give you extra value. From technical skills, yes, I think just go with the focus on the job spec, see what they write. But I can tell you that in most of the cases, job spec is also written in a way that it might not reflect your actually day-to-day responsibilities and might not reflect what actually you will be doing. As we said at the very beginning of this podcast, is that all the interviews are done by people and therefore they're subjective. Even though like they can have like very specific understanding of what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis, and like it might not involve algorithms and data structures. You'll be asked to implement like some sorting algorithm. So that's how they think they can assess your skill. And it will be very different even for similar companies, for similar position.
Is it sensible to ask for them to provide information on what will be covered in an interview? Do you typically think that's a good way of trying to get that information so you kind of know what each stage is going to be about? Or do you just say, try with the research and then see what happens when you're there?
If you can get some insights sometimes from the agent, they probably would know what they usually ask. I don't know if it's fair or not fair, but that can give you some insights, even not to learn, not how to prepare, but from which perspective to kind of present your knowledge. Because you may have, regardless of your past experience, how much of it you have, you can present the same thing from different angles, but would be good to understand what they're looking for and what they might find more valuable.
Cool. Okay. So dealing with like the offer side of things and negotiation, if you're given an offer, for example, and you have the opportunity to negotiate for things, salary, but other things around salary, what are the things that you would look for in an offer to decide as to whether or not this was actually the right opportunity for your career? And what are the approaches that you would take to negotiating to try and get the things that you want if they're not present in the offer, if you would negotiate at all for the offers that you get?
Yeah, that's a tough question because it really depends on what you're looking for, and it could be trial and error. So yeah, there are some key points that you would want to check, and again, understand what you would expect for those points. Of course, it's the pay, but that depends on how desperate you are, whether you want to push. Sometimes it's really difficult to demonstrate your value during the interview. So in software engineering, you can, if you're really good and very efficient in solving problems, you can give like double or triple of value of an average software engineer, but you wouldn't get double, triple increase of salary in that. And sometimes it might be very difficult to convince to get even like 5 or 10% higher salary. Some companies, especially larger companies, they have a structured framework of salaries So if, for example, in Monzo, they have 9 levels of engineers, and most of the large companies have levels of engineers, how they assess. If you pass, or if they're looking for an engineer of level like 3 or 4, they would have specific salary assigned to that, and you don't have much room for negotiation. If you are dealing with a startup, you may get more room for negotiations. And again, here you can use your kind of those creative advantages that you may find. If you feel that you have some advantage and you can add more value, then you can have like a leverage and ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the pay. The second one is notice period. Most likely you will change the job. And in one of the companies, I said, like, at some point and for different reasons, every single person will be leaving the company. Or even in the worst case, like if you work until pension, you will be departing the company. So you need to understand the terms of leaving. Some companies may have very short notice period, like even less than a week. Some can have a very long notice period, like 3 months or 6 months. Sometimes it could be not symmetric. So if you decide to leave, you would need to give them like 3 months. But if they decide to get rid of you, it could be 1 week. But it also depends on like jurisdictions, like what kind of company. If it's a startup, they may go out of business just on a day notice. So it's hard to control. Just assume that even if they say it's a permanent position, don't assume that it's a job security. We've seen that even people who worked for Google or Microsoft for like 10 years, they got laid off. Treat it as a business. They're a business. It's not a family. You're doing it also partially for, well, money. And as we said, it shouldn't be just for money, but it should be something that you love, that you have passion for. But also, it should be, you should treat it as a business as well.
To that point, with notice periods specifically, do you think it's better to have shorter notice periods or longer notice periods if you were to take a role?
Some way in between. Again, it depends on your specific personal conditions and requirements, whether you're doing a contract or if it's a permanent position. I think for permanent positions, it would be around 1 or 2 months. For contracts, usually it's 2 weeks. But I've seen, say, if it's a shorter term contract or if they're not very well established or don't have enough runway, they would try to have a shorter notice. Or if they're not confident in your role or in you personally, they may say it could be 1 week for the first months. So it's kind of like a trial period. And they may extend the notice period to 2 weeks after that. So sometimes again, if it's a large organization, would be difficult to negotiate. Also, there could be some terms that might be important for you. For example, and especially for permanent positions, is restrictions of what you can do outside of your job. That is a difficult one. So we discussed in this podcast that it's good if you can develop passion and be passionate and do some side projects. But some permanent positions may say that you're not allowed to have a side project, or whatever you do outside of the job. Programming belongs to them. The intellectual property belongs to them. That could be a tough one. Again, it depends on your enthusiasm. If you're dreaming about creating your products, your startups, and if that's something you do in your free time, pay attention to that and see if you can negotiate, or if they even mention. But it might not be important for you if you just want to treat it as a job and you don't have any of the initiatives outside of that.
To wrap this up, it'd be interesting to understand what it is that you're excited about now in your industry at the moment.
I'm excited and frustrated at the same time by AI. That's a huge disruption to the entire industry. And as we said, it's developing so fast that pretty much every week we get some new news about the new models, new products. And we've seen that within like 1 or 2 years, it has developed so much that it is already destroying the entry-level programming positions. There is no point of getting a junior or maybe even mid-level developer, if, for example, if you want to get them to fix some bugs, most probably those bugs can be fixed by AI, like Cursor. And I don't have an answer what the market and this industry will look like in 1 or 2 years. So you need to rethink and stay on top of the news and understand how to adjust yourself to these new demands, to these new conditions. I'm excited because it's like a blessing if you really like doing your own products. Because if previously you needed to have a skill to learn programming language to create something, now English is becoming the main programming language. Now everyone can create some level of software. It might not be necessarily production ready. It might not be necessarily worthy of investment, but you can get at least a prototype, proof of concept without even basic skill of programming. At the same time, you cannot rely that it is doing it. It might eventually be doing, but at this stage, it's not good at producing software at the levels that you don't look into that. Like pipe coding might be good enough to create something to play with, but if you try to build production ready code and you don't have understanding what that code should look like, that's not enough. So you need to have that skill. So yeah, for those trying to create products and who have some understanding of software engineering, that is like a blessing. But if you're just starting and if you're trying to take the same path that people have been taking previously to get into this industry, that is the worst thing for you. So you need to kind of find a way how to use it. And as I said, now all this, not just prompts, but one thing that I'm doing is codifying and systemizing different processes. As you know, I wrote a book called Team as Code, where I was trying to find parallels between coding and building teams, how to systemize and codify business processes, communication, and to make it look like code. But with LLMs and AIs that understand English, now documents in English become your software. As one of my side projects, which is a mobile app, I've taken approach of building the entire business, the entire organization with this approach. So I have roles of legal department, compliance people, designers, QA testers, everything is codified in markdown files in plain English. So it can be used by normal people so they could take guidelines and processes to follow and maintain this project. But also it helps me to increase the level of complexity that AI can take. So instead of prompting to implement something in a specific way, AI has already written those guidelines that it can follow to implement specific tasks. So yeah, that is something that I'm playing in my free time, trying to commercialize. Nice. I call this concept as get it codified. It's codifying, but in English, and codifying the entire company, business, or project that could be then be executed by either AI, LLM, or by a human.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. If people are interested in reaching out to you, potentially getting you as a mentor or a guide in some way, are you open to this? Is this something that you would be open to providing for people? If so, where's the best place for them to contact you?
I think the best place is LinkedIn. That's the only social network that I'm still not actively but using. And sure. Maybe in the nearest future, I'll start sharing more of my thoughts on the get it codified and using AI to codify business processes on YouTube. So, but yeah, you'll find that on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, Dmitry.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.